Off-the-shelf automation solutions will solve all your complex problems and take control. That's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Facts on Open Automation show. I'm sure you have plenty of ideas, automation projects, how to pimp up your factory with automation projects. Whenever it comes to discussions about automation, there are certain misbeliefs which exist in people's mind, which makes me shiver if I got this discussion. So in today's show, we will discuss 8 of those myths, an awful word. So we will discuss 8 of those myths and we will bust them to give you more information, to give you more arguments. But we will also talk about what is happening in the world of manufacturing. What is resilience, for example? What is it? Do I need to do something? And I have 2 expert colleagues here with me to discuss all those topics. So please welcome, hello, Rob Rain.
Hi again, Laszlo.
Product Manager at ASMPT, hello. And Mark Lackner from Kearney, hello.
Hello.
So first of all, Mark, maybe our audience doesn't know who is Kearney, so can you briefly introduce Kearney and yourself?
Certainly. Kearney is a global management consulting firm leading in the area of strategic operations. We are roughly 5,000 consultants around the globe. Making impact on the top floor and making it happen on the shop floor. And we are particularly relevant right now on the topic of resilience. And my name is Mark Lackner, as you said, working 22 years with the firm, doing a lot in the area of operations, leading also our operations practice on a global level. And resilience is very close to my heart, and that's why I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. And I think you also do this Factory of the Year challenge.
Yes, Factory of the Year is one also of my pet childs, and I'm happy also to be there. And I've learned already a lot of ASMPT factories because they've won already 3 times.
Awesome. So let's start with those myths. And I got all of them written on those cards. And the first one is the most obvious one, which we also handled last time in one of our shows. And we got actually a letter from a viewer. So dear ASMPT, absolutely fantastic show on employment and automation. Thank you. So, but if I initiate an automation project, it may nevertheless endanger the jobs of my colleagues, or in worst case, makes mine less important. So is this true, Rob?
No, Laszlo, I would say this myth is false. So automation has always traditionally replaced the dangerous, dirty, difficult jobs, which we don't want to do anyway. What it's going to do in the future, though, is enhance our jobs. It's going to make your colleagues' jobs more interesting, more varied, and it's going to be more focused on those real human skills that they have, that ability to make decisions. So we've seen, as we said before, automation doesn't cause unemployment. It's more that there's lower levels of employment are causing automation and wanting to remove the human error that can affect processes.
I understand. So, Mark, is that myth busted?
Yes, it's busted, definitely. I mean, automation helps us to get rid of these dirty jobs nobody wants to do and enriches, let's say, our work even more and generates even more jobs and gives us more decision criteria to make the right decisions. And this is then benefiting for the overall situation. So definitely a myth.
Awesome. So next one, that one sounds very positive. Oh yeah, automation, let's do that. Go buy that automation stuff and let's earn money.
So the idea that you can just get an out-of-the-box solution for your whole automation challenge is not something that's going to happen. You've got to break it down into steps and really think about the manual tasks that you want to replace. And always bear in mind the value or the cost of those manual tasks. As a kind of simple rule of thumb, if you're saving 5 minutes a day in a 24/7 factory in Germany, you're saving something like €2,000 a year. And you've got to think about how you can reinvest that money to make your next automation solution as well.
So not only out of the box. What is your reply to this myth, Mark?
Generally, of course, automation is generating money and is having typically very often a positive business case. Nevertheless, first do your homework, fix the process, then automate it, and then get the benefits. And don't do it the other way, because otherwise you have an inefficient process, but automate.
Yeah, so don't forget the processes. Good. So number 3, the most asked question when it comes to this. Oh, and this automation, will it solve all my problems?
Well, maybe given enough time, it's going to solve 80% plus of those problems, as we've used that phrase before. But to use the same example, if we're saving 2,000 euros a year for 5 minutes, then if we're doing that 10 times a day, we're now starting to talk about something like 20,000 euros, which is the kind of thing you could invest in an SMT context in something like implementing Hermes interfaces between your machines and then moving that on to being able to do remote changeover, what you're spending those 5 minutes per machine per day on. And once you've done that, you then are going to have some time back. So all that time that was being spent on that can now be used for something else. And you're making a good step forward in automation. And this is the kind of thing you can measure.
Okay, so step by step then, it could solve all my problems.
Yeah.
Number 4, I believe we have a very complex infrastructure. No automation can solve that. What do you think about that one?
Well, every complicated process is always a sum of its parts. And the deeper you dig into that complicated process, the more simple those tasks are going to start to look. So that's the place to begin. So in your complex process, find the things that you actually really can make the big impacts to begin with. We talked about 80-20, we've talked about leaf analysis, we've been able to measure and compare these things. So this kind of ability to look at that data and make the decisions about where you're going to affect that process at the bottom then means that you can do the bigger steps as you move further and further up this automation process and start to get the bigger returns.
I see. Mark, have you ever met a customer telling you this?
Always. I mean, in 9 out of 10 times, the client says, look, we are so complex, we are so difficult, we are so different, and don't come with those benchmarks or those best practice, they don't work with us. So it's like always, and as Rob said, a big journey starts with the first step, so start step by step. Of course, have the end-to-end perspective in mind and also the true north where you want to go in mind, but do it step by step. And then you will see first successes, maybe also some errors, but it will go. And in the end, you will be successful.
Yeah, so every complex situation can be done with baby steps. Number 5, coming out straight from a horror movie. Oh, automation, it will take control of all of us. We will not survive this.
I genuinely believe that is one of the bigger myths because, of course, automation is going to help us process the data so that we can make the right decisions. Because that's what it's all about. It's what humans are best at. We can look at the bigger picture. But what we don't want to be doing is spend a lot of time crunching numbers. Let's let automation do that. So, for example, if you suddenly find out that there's a component supply problem, one component is missing, automation can help you see what that will do to your production schedule right now. And it can present you with this new schedule. You can look at that, think of some of the other things, use other inputs and say, yes, I accept that decision. So it's not at all about automation controlling you. It's about giving you the power to control that complicated process yourself.
So it's actually the feeling people have to losing control. That's what they make them shiver.
That's right. And I think something we can all associate with is that cruise control on a car, some people kind of feel that's taking away control, that I should be in charge. But of course, what really happens is that if the car is controlling your speed, you've got more attention for the road and you're a bit more relaxed because you're not having to hold your foot in one place. And that has led to the evolution of cruise control to adaptive cruise control. And then we've got lane departure and all kinds of other things that come in. And we all naturally take these on and accept that these are the roles that automation can do better than we can.
Mark, do you like horror movies?
I need to confess, not at all. I really love instead science fiction movies and series, Star Trek and the like. And in this context, I would also say, look, AI is a very hot topic, artificial intelligence. And a lot of people think a system or someone else is deciding about myself and I can't recognize what is the pattern, what is the reason for that. But I love to call AI not at artificial intelligence, but more an amplifying intelligence. So amplifying the human being to be better, to make better decisions, to avoid dirty jobs, and so on and so forth. And this, in the end, helps us to be better in the job and having more fun.
To infinity and beyond. So I'm glad that you mentioned AI. It makes my job easier because the last one sounds like this. Oh yes, that's the cool stuff. Robots and AI. Let's get that. Let's do that automation. So does automation equals to robots?
Not at all. It's great that you've got this long-term view of what to do with automation, but it really is this stepwise process. So get the steps that you can do to start with. We've said it many times that leaping straight onto robots as the solution to the problem is not a clever first step. Much better to look at some of the other aspects of it and focus on those instead. Always keep your mind on the kind of things that you can have as side effects. Again, using that Hermes example, to implement Hermes, you need to network the machines together, and then you solve it for the problem of Hermes communication. But now you can also use exactly that same learning process to connect those machines to other systems and start that automation. So this makes Hermes a great first step for connecting your machines together.
Yeah, so automation can be as easy also as a software like Hermes.
Exactly, yes.
Thank you both. So I promised you to clarify 8 myths, so 6 so far we busted, but 2 additional ones I have discussed with Alessandro Bonara over there in our electronics manufacturing site. Hi Alessandro.
Hi Laszlo.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
We are talking in this show about myths of automation. It's an awful word. Did you encounter some of these myths?
Oh, all the time. Believe me. That's with colleagues and even with customers. Yes, definitely.
And also with your boss?
Oh, there, of course.
So we have promised to our viewers that we clarify 8 myths, and I saved 2 of them for you. So number 7 is like following. Yeah. Yes, automation is nice, Alessandro, but it's only for companies with huge resources and large volumes, so nothing for us. Is that a misbelief?
Look, Laszlo, we have now a situation we are looking everywhere for people also with qualified background, and it's so difficult to get such a people. And every automation that we can help us to move also our qualified people for one process in the other production stuff, they help us. Believe me. That's, I show you already also in the past as shows, also we have peak to light, also we have like the stencil rack, so we have other stuff. So that it's all everything has helped us also to support also this. Definitely, this myth is totally wrong. Even a small company, automation can support also the productivity and support a small company.
Great, I remember the rack. It was a cool project. Number 8 sounds very positive. Oh, and boss, do not worry. Once you have the automation implemented, you don't have to be concerned about it again.
Very, very common. Very common also myth. I give a good example for this one. 2017, we started also with one project, and we finalized the project. It was quite good and quite well. We want to test also our PCB. PCB with the ICT test, and we use as a robot also to pick up also this PCB testing and also put in the pass or not pass also shelf. That's actually this was a concept, and it's not also proof of concept. We also working with this one. Now customer requirement change and volume change and the requirement also productivity changes too. That's now we review this process, and we have to review all the time and see how to match now also the new requirement for our customer. And now with a new process that we are going also now, we have made simulated now, but also we are going also to review also this one and start also next year, the beginning of next year. We consolidate two different processes, now the depaneling of the PCBA and also the testing in one. And then also now we can not only depaneling and testing, the meaning two processes in one consolidated, we can enhance the number of the PCB, not only two, but we are talking about 5 to 6 different PCBA that we can use the same way also to in the automation.
So this myth is busted.
Definitely, this is definitely not true.
And so you also busted another myth because it was a complex procedure.
It's a complex procedure. We use a lot of human resources to do this one. Now combine the both of them, and this is actually help us a lot. And now, if we're looking now in the future, if we're talking about next year, coming year, that's we are going also to enhance this one again, and we review again also this process, and we want also to look inside the packaging. The meaning what's happened after the testing. Made you looking inside and say maybe we can also directly after the testing, if the PCB is good, directly pack in this one.
Fantastic. Please reserve us a first row seat. We will visit you next year again.
You're always welcome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alessandro.
Thank you.
8 myths clarified, but I'm sure you came across others as well. If you want to share them with us and the audience, please post them in our comment section. So Mark, so far we talked about production, the core of supply chain. But let's get an overall picture. What is happening now in the world of manufacturing?
The world is, to be honest, out of balance. We are living in a VUCA world. VUCA in terms of volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. It's getting crazier while we speak. I mean, we had, if you just think, the pandemic, the war, shortages, now inflation, recession. I mean, it's crazy. We as a firm and myself also, we thought about how can we give the COOs a helping hand there. And what we said, we need to focus on the topic of resilience. Resilience is the ability to manage and challenge difficulties you have not expected before. And we strongly believe you need to do it in an end-to-end fashion. That means from the plan to deliver, and only with this you can master this going forward.
Good, so resilience is something new now. How can a manufacturing company do resilience?
Yeah, resilience, to define this is quite simple. So it's everyone, a person or company is facing challenges, and resilience is the capability or the ability to master these challenges, typically unexpected. And if we look on a company, in the supply chain, we divide this up in plan, source, make, deliver, and an end-to-end perspective. And if you look quickly on the plan thing, there you need to be aware that you probably don't have only one scenario, you have multiple scenarios that can happen. In the source area, you probably not only have one supplier, you have multiple suppliers. You need to think not only about one supplier in China, but also maybe reshoring in Eastern Europe. In the manufacturing area, what we speak, you also need to think about how you can be a bit more independent of the human factor, how you can work remote, how you can define things, how you can leverage automation. And in the delivery area, you need to make sure that you also have, even in strange and tough times, the right ability to deliver things. And last but not least, think end-to-end about, for example, inventory levels and working capital. Because especially nowadays when the working capital costs going high, this is a real challenge for your cash.
In fact, yes, you have written also multiple articles about how to achieve resilience, and we will share the link in the description. But can you briefly summarize those to our viewers?
Yes, indeed. As a partner of the World Economic Forum, we worked on the topic of resilience for several years already, and we also have developed a kind of a navigator, resilience navigator, where we can then also have a framework and an assessment tool to give companies a helping hand if they look, am I resilient enough? Nevertheless, I want to focus on a recent article, what I've written together with fellow friends. It's called the 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years plan for supply chain CEOs with insomnia. Because insomnia, that's probably how the CEOs feel right now. Every morning they wake up and another challenge is there. And in this article, we give specific advice. We say, look on the next 3 weeks, make sure you can deliver. Look on your critical items, make alignments and agreements with your suppliers, even pay a premium, but make sure you can deliver. The 3 months plan is about the topic of protecting your margin. That means look on the cost cutting, look on the topic of demand management, look on productivity increase, do the good old stuff what you anyhow do in times of recession. And the last thing, that's probably the most important thing, look on structural optimization. Because nowadays, the simple world where you said, look, follow the lowest cost is over. As we said, we need to be resilient and we need to be sustainable, and therefore set up and redefine your supply chain that it also is future-proof and is fit for the future.
So, Mark, what changes are you expecting to see coming up in the near future?
Challenges are a lot to come, and unfortunately I don't have a crystal ball, so I can tell you already what's coming around. But my strong belief is the next challenge is, of course, inflation/recession, especially in the European region. So we need to master this. The second thing, what I will see out there is the topic of geopolitical tensions, especially in the Eastern Hemisphere, so around China, Taiwan, Asian states. So this will be as a challenge and also has an impact on the global supply chain setups and strategies. And last but not least, it's a topic of sustainability. I mean, it's right now, a lot of things have been discussed, a lot of things have been exchanged, but it's now time to action. And therefore, I think we need to think as a society, as people, but also as companies and industries about how to tackle Scope 1, Scope 2, but also Scope 3 emissions. And the uncomfortable truth is we can only do it together. And that's why we need to team up with downstream and upstream partners.
Thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned at the very beginning the word VUCA, because our CEO has another interpretation of the word VUCA, and I had the chance to have an interview with him about this. Guenter, great to see you.
Good to see you, Laszlo.
Let's start with a buzzword of this year, VUCA. It might be one of the top buzzwords nowadays. You had an interesting interpretation of this word posted on LinkedIn. Can you explain that to our viewers?
Sure, yeah. Most of the people, when they talk about VUCA, they talk about challenges and what is the world doing going forward, how does the future look like, and are a little bit afraid of what's coming. I think we should take it as an opportunity and use a different interpretation of VUCA, which is vision, understanding, clarity, and agility, and take it as an opportunity, take on those challenges and make something better out of it and a better world going forward.
I liked it, how you turn a negative word into a very positive one. And another question is, you as a member of the ASMPT board, you consistently meet players of the electronics industry, not only those in the electronic manufacturing, but also those from upstream and downstream stages. So what are some of your insights for 2023 in the course of your discussions?
Okay. First of all, I think supply chain issues will ease a little bit. So we don't have to fight as much as in the last couple of years anymore with the supply chain topics. Market still will be volatile, a little bit up and down, but overall, long term, definitely the market will develop quite well. Sustainability, ESG, will become an important topic going forward. We all have to do our job, also as companies or as private people, to save the world going forward. And looking into the production itself, automation becomes an important topic. Also to address the VUCA things like material shortages and not having enough people for your production, that you can run more independent and more automated in your factory.
I'm glad, Guenter, that you mentioned automation. We didn't pay you for that. So I'm curious, when you talk about automation, what do you say to people?
Automation in SMT production, you can say the SMT process itself is quite a standard process already, but everything around, there's still room for improvement, that we can do more automation in terms of material flow and getting more transparency in the production by having good software solutions showing where the material is and where what the production status is and so on. And for this, I think you need to do more in terms of automation to be, at the end, more resilient to all the issues coming from the outside and still be able to run your production.
Awesome, Guenter. Thanks for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
VUCA with a positive meaning as a chance. Rob, we are at the year-end show in the midst of summaries. So can you recap the 3 most important points for you on open automation?
Yes, Laszlo. I think I would start by saying it's the importance of having a holistic approach to automation. It's not as simple as working out your costs, working out what it's going to cost to automate that, dividing those 2 numbers. You've got to think about the other factors. Mark told us a lot about resilience, and this is somewhere we can actually apply that resilience. So really understanding the cost of human error and how automation can remove that. And also, of course, the effect of that labor, of having people. 5 years ago, we would have said, what happens if the whole workforce can't come in tomorrow? And people would have kind of thought it was a strange thing to ask. And nowadays, it's really the other way completely. Sometimes it feels like a surprise that we're coming into work. And certainly at the end of the pandemic, that's a bit how it felt. So I would focus on that part. Have a structure, such as Leaf, for measuring and comparing the options that you have for automation.
So it's the first 2 shows actually with you. It's the 80-20 and the Leaf show.
That's right,
and
yes.
also the white papers we have.
Yes.
What are the other 2?
Well, for the second one, I would say it's the importance of having standards. So, as we said, automation, you have a complex process, and then we break it down into those pieces and tackle them one at a time. But ultimately, they do all have to connect together. And I liked what Thomas said in one of the other shows about like a common language. So it's easier to learn new phrases in a language you know than it is to learn a whole new language. And the analogy for us is something like CFX. So the first time you connect a machine through CFX, maybe just to collect some status data, then you've done a lot of the work, so that when you move to another machine and you want to collect also status data or perhaps something different, if it's something different, you're just learning new words for the same language, and that's going to make it much easier to do.
Yes, I remember that cool show. It was the show about ipc-cfx in October.
Yes.
And the last one for you?
There's a sometimes controversial phrase that data is the new oil. And I think in our case, in SMT, it's very true. We all have a lot of data. And this is the analogy to having a lot of crude oil buried in the ground. But just like the crude oil, that's raw data. And we need to be able to process that data into something useful. That useful data can be used in the first instance to decide what we're going to automate, to identify the things that are costing us time, costing us yield, or simply costing us money. And secondly, it can be used once you've implemented the automation to have the before and after scenario and really prove that the automation has actually done what you wanted it to do. So tools like Works Performance Monitor that Stefan showed us in a recent show are a great example of that. And I think that also highlights the importance that, as Mark said, we need to think about the supply chain from end to end, but also to turn that through 90 degrees and think about how suppliers of the equipment in that chain can also help. So I would very much say work with suppliers, because we want to help with this. We want to do our part in this VUCA world to make it more resilient.
Yeah. So those were our shows in July and August about data. Thank you, Rob. Mark, data, the new oil, that must be a universal truth nowadays.
It is, definitely it is. You can do so much with data and the benefits can be enormous. Nevertheless, the uncomfortable truth again is you need to refine it. And first you need to refine it, then you can bring it into context and you can apply your algorithms and then you get a meaningful, let's say, decision base to reap benefits. And I know in a lot of companies the data is not refined yet. Even if it hurts, you need to start, do it now, and sooner or later you get your benefits.
Perfect final words. Thanks you both for your expertise. Those were all our topics for today. I have some final information for you. ASMPT can be met at following events physically. You see those events in the ticker on the bottom of your screen. Mark, where can you be met in the upcoming time?
Over Christmas at my parents in the near Stuttgart, and then hopefully afterwards, end of January at Davos at the World Economic Forum.
Perfect of you mentioning Christmas, because we have some gifts for you. As always, all the special white papers you can download. You find the link in the description. But we have, of course, also our free demo demonstrations. You just have to contact your ASMPT account manager. And don't forget the free subscription and to give us a thumbs up, and you get a free virtual hug. So that's all for us. Thank you both. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you also for joining us. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and see you in February.